everywhere the water's getting rough. Your best intentions may not be enough. I wonder if we're gonna ever get home tonight. But if you break down, I'll drive out and find you. If you forget my love, I'll try to remind you. I'll stay by you when it don't come easy. When it don't come easy.
Everyone. And just this morning I got something. I was talking to my nephew in India early in the day. I told him I was coming here to talk about Hinduism. And he sent me a note and he said, you might enjoy that. And I said, do you know the meaning of good morning? How many do? Well, he says, G stands for get up. O stands for open the heart. The next O stands for open the mind. D stands for dedicate your day to God. M, meditate. O, optimize your resources. R, rebuke all negative thoughts. N, never underestimate your potential. I, inspire someone. N, never lose faith. And G, go out with joy and confidence. And I thought I'll start with that. I'll send him a note that you all appreciated that. Hinduism is the word to this date, I think very few people really understand. Hinduism was the word which was coined by the British and is supposed to represent all faiths, cultures, and religions which are started in India, but which are not Islam or Christianity. All faiths there. So really, within Hinduism umbrella, it's not one faith, there are multiple of faiths. And if you had to understand all faiths, it would take years and years and years. So I thought I'll give you a little summary and gist of some of the things which are common to many of those faiths. And again, repeat, many, not all. And before I start, I wanted to read a definition which I thought I got from Wikipedia, which I think is a very nice one. It says, unlike other religions of the world, the Hindu religion does not claim any one prophet. It does not worship any one god. It does not believe in any one philosophic concept. It does not follow any one act of religious rites or performances. In fact, it does not satisfy the traditional features of a religion or creed. That's Hinduism. So depending on if you were to visit India, and depending on what part of India you go to, or what temple, or what church you go to, you are going to come back with a different impression of Hinduism. You could have 3 Hindus standing here and talking about Hinduism, and each one's concept of Hinduism is going to be different, depending on what lineage or what sect they came up in or what they believe in. But one thing which is common to most of the sects, except for one which is called Charvakism, and they really believe in the reality is what you can perceive by your 5 senses. They don't believe in the past or the future, they believe in what you can perceive by 5 senses. So to them, there's no God. But apart from that, so that's also part of Hinduism, but very few people follow that. The main supreme God we all believe is we call Brahman. It's a supreme God which is existent everywhere. You cannot define it, you cannot describe it, because it's beyond the human concept. This God, and then what that divinity or what that God has created the universe, God has created the earth, God has created us. And we have that divinity, that spirit in all of us. No matter what part of the world we come from, we have that spirit in all of us. But when we look at each other and we see this, you're different, we call that in our Hindu philosophy as Maya. That's an illusion. But we all are really part of the same spirit, the same super spirit, or same what we call Brahman. And then within each one of us is the soul, which is common again in everyone. And eventually the soul came from God, and eventually it is going to go back, merge into God. But while that is happening, we have to be able to lead that pure life for the soul to eventually go back. So Brahman has given us the chance to be born again and again, to purify ourselves, to improve ourselves, till eventually we can follow the right path and have our soul merge with Brahman again. And that's what in different, like in Buddhism, they call it nirvana. We call it moksha. And there are different sects and all, they call it by different name. But it is, at that time, we are not going to be born in this life. We are not going to take this human form. We are eventually going to merge with the soul, with the supreme soul from which we all came. And we also believe that whatever we are going through today, whether it's sadness or happiness, it is because of our own doing. It's the action and the consequence. If we are suffering today, it must be something that we have done. And because the soul is born again and again, it could be it's something that has happened to us we did in a previous life. In fact, that's one way Hinduism explains when somebody asks a question, why is that child born crippled? Or why is a child suffering from this? The only way the Hindus explain that maybe something happened in the previous person's life. And very often, when they will say to a person, now look, you're going through such suffering because of your child. And the answer to that is, God is giving me the opportunity to serve and purify myself. So whatever happens to you is either part of our own, what we have done, or God is giving us the opportunity, the soul, to that purify ourselves, to lead the perfect life, so eventually we are not going to be born again and not take this human form. And when I talked about spirit, scriptures and all, there are multiple scriptures, depending on what lineages we come from. The oldest scriptures in Hinduism are called Vedas. And we believe they were written sometime about 1600 BC. And they were not written by one person, they were written by multiple persons. And they talk about philosophies. And when somebody reads those Vedas, in the same Veda, they talk about the concept of God. And there are sections where they talk about, is there a God? So they were written over several generations, and a lot of people have authored those, and really they have put down their thoughts and their philosophies in those. Those are the oldest. Subsequent to that, there were people who tried to analyze those and try to simplify those, and there are other scriptures we call Upanishads, and then there's a Ramayana, and there's Mahabharata, and there are a whole lot of them, and also depending on what lineages you're following. And sometimes you might have heard of multiple gods. When we believe that there's Brahma, the overall God, but what the God has done, the God has created this world. So God is looked at as a creator. God is also preserving us. Is also God looked as a preserver. And then if there's evil, evil gets destroyed. So God is also looked as a destroyer of evil. So different people, the artists have rendered different concepts to these, and they're different manifestations. And so somebody will call them Brahma, the preserver. Or they'll call it Vishnu, the preserver. So those people who follow Vishnu, to them, That is the God Vishnu they pray. Those who say that God really destroys evil, they have formed one concept and they call that Shiva. So that's where in people's imagination and all, they have given different pictures, different views, different powers of God have been given a different perspective, and that's where you have multiple gods. So some people believe in one, some believe in another, and others, some of them don't even believe in that. So from some of the scriptures, the Upanishads, I'll read out some sections. Like, this is on the oneness. The wise men behold all things in the self, that is the spirit within, the soul, and the self in all beings. And that reason he does not hate anyone. To the seer, the one who sees, all things have verily become the self. What delusion, what sorrow can there be for him who beholds that oneness amongst everyone? Another place it says, this is really a different translation of that. They were originally written in Sanskrit. He who sees all being in the self and the self in all beings, he never turns away from it, the self. For he who perceives all beings as the self, how can there be delusion or grief when he sees the oneness everywhere? That is, again, we believe that spirit. A different Upanishad says differently. He says, as the rivers flowing east and west merge in the sea and become one with it, forgetting they were separate rivers, so do all the creatures lose their separateness when they merge at last into the pure being. There is nothing that does not come from him, or everything he is the inmost self. He is the truth, he is the self-supreme. You are that. Shvetketu, you are that. And the Shvetketu is, this child asks his father, what am I? And the father is talking down to him, and that's where his name comes in. But that's the father explaining to the child that we all are one. There's the Hindu philosophy with all these gods, and also realizing that aptitudes or attitudes of every human being is different. So you cannot have one path that is going to take you. There cannot be one path because every human being is different. To be able to merge, to lead that pure life and to eventually merge into the super soul, there got to be different paths because people are different. And to get that contact with God, we have come up with different paths and all. And that's what they call about the 4 paths to the union with God. One is, we call the path of selfless action. We call it karma yoga. The word yoga, what you all have seen is you've seen all these asanas and people bending down and all. The word yoga really means union. Union of my soul with the Supreme Soul. And I'll get into these. The other is path of devotion, what we call bhakti yoga. There's path of concentration and meditation, which is Raja Yoga. And there's path of knowledge and discrimination, which is called Jnana Yoga. The path of selfless action really teaches us, forget about who we are serving. Just serve. Be good to mankind. Be good to humans. Just love everyone and just serve everyone. And while you're serving, you're forgetting yourself. And if that's all you're doing for the other people you meet, you're serving, you're helping, that eventually will purify your mind and will make you do good things, and you will eventually merge with the Supreme Soul. So that's the path. And that's the path for people who are very active, action-minded. And it says, it's not what one does, but the spirit in which the work is done. We are doing this service not because we want something to be returned to us, not because we want a reward for it. We are doing because that's what is expected of us. And that is the path for these. Then there's bhakti yoga. People who are not able to do that, for them it says just concentrate. Think of God in any way you want. Whatever God it is, you know that they all are divine. Just concentrate, love that God. So that is where that multiplicity of God comes. In the same house, you may find one person is following Rama, another person is following Krishna, or the other person is following someone else. That's okay, because they are really manifestation of the same God. So as long as you're following that manifestation, that God, you eventually are loving the God within. And that's why you have multiple gods. And normally when you start off this loving, what happens? A person eventually does some ceremonies and all that, that's creating that relationship with the God. Then repeating the prayers and mantras, and eventually sometimes even start believing of the God within you. And that is really the soul, the spirit, no matter what form, it is the same thing. It's just different ways of looking at it. Then there's a path of concentration and meditation. If you don't want to spend your time and going and saying prayers to somewhere, you don't have the time and just going serving, then just concentrate, meditate, think of the God within you. And eventually when you keep on meditating, at some stage, you'll get purer and purer, and your actions will become better and better. Because when you start meditating and thinking of the soul and spirit within everyone, it's the same spirit given by the same, how can you do any harm to them? And the more you meditate, the more it'll make you love everyone. And you might, or some of you might have heard the word of Patanjali, the Yoga Sutras and all. And Patanjali was who really advocated and spent a lot of time when he came up. And a lot of people, when they look at Patanjali, they again think of only the asanas and the exercises and all. But he laid out an 8-path step. The first one is yama, that even to get to that, the Yoga Sutras, he says, truthfulness, non-violence, non-stealing, and that's what you have to start thinking. You've got to start bringing that into your actions. And before you do anything, that's what you have to purify yourself. The next is, think of the cleanliness, contentness that comes after that. And then once you've been able to purify your mind and think that way holistically and all, then only should you start doing your asanas. Because to get into meditation, you have to start doing asanas. You have to be physically fit to be able to do meditation. And that's where he talks about asanas, is just to make yourself physically fit to be able to do the other things which you're required to do. And then, after asanas, then the breathing exercises. That's the 4th step over there in Patanjali's. And then, after that, it's only when you're able to do that, then he says, start your meditation. If you don't have that purity of heart, purity of action, you don't have physically, you're not all right. If you can't sit down and breathe peacefully, there's no point in meditation. You won't be able to meditate. And that's where the meditation comes in. And then after you're able to meditate, then the next stage of meditation is concentration. And then it gets into deeper meditation, and then being able to merge and to be able to devote yourself with the God. And really the path of knowledge and discrimination is the same thing. For someone to think, rationalize what you read, what you read in the scriptures. If you can't meditate, then just try to rationalize and think about that way. And that eventually, the more you rationalize, the more it'll bring you to the right path. So they say the final goal is the path of discovery is the one supreme soul within us, that with the supreme soul above. And the 4 paths, they say, the basic belief is that all humans are divine and that divinity is indivisible. Control of ego through selfless activity. Power of concentration and discrimination. And as I said, the path of selfless action was for the active person. The path of devotion was for the devotional person who can sit down and can concentrate and meditate and think of God and love an image. The path of meditation is for the strong-willed person, and the path of knowledge is for a rational person. Swami Vivekananda, I don't know how many of you heard of Swami Vivekananda. When they had the World Conference in 1893, there's something he said, and I picked that up from him. Each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest this divinity within by controlling nature, external and internal. Do this either by work or worship or psychic control or philosophy, by one or more or all of these, and be free. This is the whole religion. Doctrine or dogmas or rituals or books or temples or form are but secondary details. So we use these as second details, but eventually it is to purify ourselves. Now, from the Vedas and all that, there are so many different sects were formed, and one of them, which is known is very popular, is called Arya Samaj. And I'll read something out. Principles of Arya Samaj, which are officially established, they were in around about 1875. It says, God is the original source of all that is true knowledge and all that is known by physical science. God is existent, conscious, formless, almighty, just, merciful, unbegotten, infinite, unchangeable, beginningless, incomparable, the support of all, the Lord of all-pervading, omniscient, and controller of all from within. Ever mature, imperishable, formless, fearless, eternal, pure, and creator of the universe, it alone must be worshipped. That's what Arya Samaj says, and which I talked about. Brahman. And those who follow Brahman, they do not go into the other gods, which are different manifestation. All persons should always be ready to accept the truth and renounce the untruth. All acts ought to be performed in conformity with the dharma, that is the righteousness and one's duty. Duty to the land, duty to your friends, duty to the children, duty to your society. The primary object of Arya Samaj is to be good to the whole world, to promote physical, spiritual, and social progress of all humans, not only yourself or your group or your family. Your dealings with all should be regulated by love and due justice in accordance with the dictates of Dharma. Dharma is again righteousness. And nobody has to teach us righteousness, it comes within us. Even as they say that in Hindu philosophy, that even when a thief is doing something, he may think that's the right thing to do at that moment, but in his conscience, he knows what he's doing is not right. None should remain satisfied with one's own elevation only, but should incessantly strive the social uplift of all, realize one's own elevation is the elevation of others. All persons ought to dedicate themselves necessarily for the social good and the well-being of all, subordinating the personal interest while the individual is free to enjoy freedom of action for the individual well-being. So that is the Arya Samaj, which really comes from the Vedas, the earliest scriptures, which I mentioned to earlier, which were written in several centuries BC. And because of these principles, Arya Samaj had many converts from other segments of Hindu who followed different sects, people had converted. Even from Sikh, Christianity, and Islam, people had converted to this aspect of Hinduism, this particular sect. And also Arya Samaj condemns polytheism, idol worship, animal sacrifice, ancestor worship, pilgrimage, priestcraft, and offerings made in temples, belief in avatars and incarnations, caste system, discrimination against women. And more Hindus are following this. So you don't need to go to a temple. You don't have to go to have an idol there. And most of these people, they just practice every morning when they wake up. They'll say their prayers. And that's really the root of Hinduism. But the path could be different. You could use an idol as I talked about it, but eventually it's leading you to the same thing. So there are multiple paths, and that's what I said. There are so many different scriptures, there are so many different approaches, but they're all leading to the same thing. Realizing the divinity within yourself, divinity within everyone else, and eventually knowing that this divinity is going to merge with the super soul. The prayer that is quite universal to all these, the meaning of that is the prayer is asking the Almighty. Some people look at the light within or light above, for spiritual awakening and enlightening your intellect. So very often you light the lamp and you think of this prayer, and that's what I'm going to light the lamps and say that in Sanskrit. This way? Now in this prayer, look at the light. Think of the light within yourself. Think of the light which has come from the God above. And meditate on that, just asking God, please awaken my spirit within and enlighten me, my intellect. I'll say that 3 times, then leave some time for meditation, and then we'll... Om Bhur Swaha Tat Savitur Vareniyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhyo Yonam Prachodayat. Om Bhur Swaha Tat Savitur Vareniyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhyo Yona Prachodayat. Om Bhur Swaha Tat Savitur Vareniyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhyo Yona Prachodayat. Om Loka Samastha Sukhino Bhavantu Loka samastha sukhino bhavantu. Loka samastha sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Now that prayer which I said, I told you the gist, the exact meaning, I'll just read out. Om, the divine illumination which pervades the physical plane, astral plane, and celestial plane. The divine illumination which is the most adorable. On the divine radiance we meditate. May that enlighten our intellect and awaken our spiritual wisdom. And this has been taken from the Vedas, which was written around about again 1600 BC. And at the end, I said, Om Loka Samastha Sukhino Bhavantu, really meaning, let there be peace, let everyone in the world be peaceful. Let there be happiness all over the world. Let there be happiness all over the world, 3 times. And when I say Om Shanti Shanti Shanti, the word Shanti means peace. And first I'm saying peace within, peace above me, and peace everywhere. Open to questions. This last portion, Arya Samaj, is what we follow. And we try to live by that. And when it says that we accept everyone, we don't have to go to a temple. We say our prayers every morning. We say our prayers anytime. Even when I'm going to start something important, I'll say that prayer, God, please enlighten me so that I do the things right. I say that Om Bhurvasva Tatsavitar Vareniyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Deo Yona Prachodhyat. I don't know how many times a day I'll say it. Anytime I'm going to do something important, or even when I came to talk over here, I said that within my mind, that God, let me do the right thing. Please enlighten me so that I can do the thing and serve everyone.
When do you worship together as a group?
What we do is that we meet at the temple, and at the temple, as I told you, there are different people, they follow different sects. So first when we formed the temple, we had the difficulty deciding what idol are we going to have in the temple. So we took somewhat a survey of most of the people over here, what they followed, and we have about 8 different idols. For those who follow this Krishna, those who follow Ram, those who follow, they just go there and say their prayers. And initially it was difficult for us to get a priest, because the Vaishnava priest who follows Vishnu, he will not do the Shiva pujas. And those who do Shiva puja will not do the Vaishnava puja. And so we looked around, and finally one of them said that that's okay, I understand. It's really different manifestation of the same God, so I'll be here to serve you, and we were lucky to have a priest. Now we who follow Arya Samaj, we asked this priest when my mother-in-law died. After that, we wanted to have a little ceremony at home, which Arya Samaj prayers are normally at home. We asked this priest that please could you come and do an Arya Samaj prayer for us in the house. And he made a list of all the things which we are supposed to have for that prayer, for the ritual. And when Purnima looked at it, they said, that's not Arya Samaj, because we don't believe in all these things. So he asked the priest, can't you do Arya Samaj? He said, no, I don't know that aspect. So we had our own ceremony at home, but we do meet at temple. It's partly socially and partly we understand there is just a different manifestation of the same God. And when you talk of the 4 paths, if that's the path somebody's going to follow, but within the heart, they're the same. So we meet at the temple. Sometimes people will have different functions at their houses, and we socialize and we meet. But in India, like here, we got 8 idols in the same. In India, you will not find that. Each temple is devoted to one different God, different manifestation. Yes. Pardon?
And in India, each home has its own little temple.
Yes, they have a little space where they say their prayers and all that.
Yeah. My sister's mother-in-law is a Shivite.
Okay.
And they have a Ganesh temple in her kitchen.
Ganesh, and then they would also be having a Shiva image.
Yes.
One more question.
Your thoughts on why Creator created humans?
That I don't have an answer. Why we are here, why God created this universe, why God created us, I don't have an answer to that. All I know is that I am here today, and I do believe in that spirit within everyone is created by the same God. What is my function? I do not know. All I know is I am here today, and physically thank God for what God has given me. Thank you. Thank you.